Join me, Phil Stephanie, and Russell Gerber on an interactive show designed to give you more insight and context to all things African.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the On Point Show. My name is Russell Gerber and joined by the wonderful Phil Stephanie. Phil, you out there?
I am Russ. How are you?
Excellent. No, I'm great. Thank you. Great. We got a little bit of a different one on the books for you today, folks. So we're going to be focusing today on anti-poaching, which is obviously quite different from what we've done in the past. And specifically, we're going to be chatting about the Black Mambas, these wonderful ladies that you see on your screen right now, and a wonderful conservation group.
It is with a great honor and privilege to receive this prestigious award on behalf of Black Mambas Anti-poaching Unit. I am humble and grateful to the recognition we gained from United Nations. I am sure there are other men and women in the world who are doing their best to protect natural resources. But the United States spotted the little effort we are putting on our work, and we appreciate it. I would love to gain my deepest thanks to UNEP, Craig Spencer, Minister of Environment, Edna Mulewa, Department of Environment, Sun Parks, and everyone for believing in us and giving us opportunity to do the work which was said it's a man's job. We thank you.
We say zero tolerance to rhino poaching and illegal wildlife trade.
So those lovely ladies, this was just a great clip we wanted to show you from one of the biggest accolades that they've achieved as a group, the Black Mambas. And this was a UN award in 2015, a Champion of the Earth award, which of course is awarded to outstanding achievements in the world of conservation in Africa. And that's certainly something that these ladies have done. Phil, you've had the pleasure of meeting some of these ladies, haven't you?
Yeah, I spent a couple of days up in the area that's around the Naledi Dam area. So Naledi, Camera, Cat Eye, and Olifants. That's the area that they predominantly operate in. And yeah, it was quite amazing to see how what they actually do in those areas. One of the concepts is to be completely unarmed, which is quite an interesting one. But it seems so far they've had zero conflict since they've been operating in that area. And essentially, they spend most of their time checking the boundary, looking for tracks, doing cross sections, removing snares. And one of the most important things that has come out of this is the concept of presence. They're very hard working. They're out 24 hours a day. It's actually quite tricky to tie them down for any photo shoots or interviews. But yeah, just a really good example of a functional anti-poaching unit that actually seems to be limiting conflict.
Yeah, just an amazing little team of ladies. And as you said, Phil, that's obviously the main concept here. These are a team of all women anti-poaching rangers, essentially. But I know many of you wonder, well, what is anti-poaching and how do they do it normally? So what's the difference between the Black Mambas and how the usual systems of anti-poaching is done? Well, for the most part, it tends to be, a reaction to people coming onto the reserve looking for the opportunity of taking animals for financial gain. And what will normally happen is people will get out there in uniform, loaded with weapons in order to defend themselves and also to hopefully catch and arrest those potential poachers on these wildlife reserves. And that has been the traditional system for years and years. But as technology has increased and the funding for many of these poaching syndicates has become more and more available, the fight against anti-poaching has just been more and more difficult. And as Phil said, one of the great things about the Black Mamba team and their focus was really being on the ground and boots on the ground at all times rather than reactionary. But Phil, tell us a little bit about Bululi. I also know you spent some time up there as well. I mean, how big is this area that they're looking after?
Yeah, the whole space, Russ, I'm not 100% sure, but I think because there's quite a few reserves next to each other, but there's at least 35,000 hectares, and that then runs into Klesiri and eventually runs into the Sabi Sands, and that runs into the Kruger, and the Black Mambas operate in a huge area. And so I'm not actually too sure the size of the full operation, but it's certainly they send 3 to 4, sometimes 5 people out in one group. So they're not alone or not even in twos. And they're out in all corners of the Bululi Reserve pretty much 24/7.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard work, unrewarding work. And you can see in a lot of these little clips here, you know, what anti-poaching is all about and what these ladies are up to. It's patrolling fences, it's removing snares. This is what's happening here, a traditional wire snare, because the bushmeat industry is also a big deal. It's not always the big high-profile animals that the poachers are after. A big part of the conservation of these protected areas in South Africa is, of course, just simply protecting them from this bushmeat trade. People who are simply hungry, looking for opportunity to feed themselves. And of course, that is a huge socio-economic issue in itself that needs to be solved. But the key bit for these ladies has been the community relationship. And, you know, obviously their focus is to protect these iconic species like elephants, of course, from the ivory trade, and then other species as well, from elephants to lions. We've got rhinos, all the different species that fall under these umbrella species that are so iconic for most people. And I mean, the ivory trade is still a huge issue across Africa. And I can't remember the exact numbers, Phil, but I feel like there's been a huge spike in anti-poaching, or sorry, in poaching of elephants in East Africa, certainly. And it's programs like this one that has helped to mitigate that to a degree in South Africa.
Yeah, there's no doubt that poaching on a commercial level, as well as because a lot of poaching, if not probably about 80% of the poaching that goes on in this particular area, in the Bululi area, is actually subsistence poaching. It's feeding themselves, feeding the people in the area around the reserve, which is where that connection is so valuable. So there's a couple of questions here. It's quite interesting, Stephanie and Christy, guys. You're mentioning the concept of you wouldn't like to be unarmed, and how do they protect themselves? And essentially, like Russell was saying, you know, that's been the way of anti-poaching for forever, and it's been on a constant increase. So the idea, and having spent time with the Black Mambas and the fellow who runs the show, there, a guy by the name of Craig, the concept was to try, how can we do something different? And I spoke to 2 of the ladies that gave me 2 different scenarios when they had come across poachers that were armed. What was quite interesting is that under both circumstances, the poachers were a bit confused as to, first of all, they're being confronted by ladies, and both of the confrontations were by surprise, by the way. So they didn't just run up to them and say, "Hey, you know, put the guns down." They actually the poachers were quite stunned, I guess, by the sounds of things, and weren't too sure how to deal with this. And in both situations, they just ran off. In that case, from there, they got onto the radios and got the rest of the system and rest of the program for the people into positions to try and anticipate where they would leave the reserve. And actually, both situations, they were caught. So then the idea was that that confrontational issue. If you've got a weapon and you approach somebody, you've got a much bigger chance of them firing at you, and now now you've got war in your hands. And I do know that it happens in some areas like that, but there is an interesting level of success with this different approach. The other thing that they do really well, they drill the concept of awareness. They drill the concept of non-confrontational, rather let's move quietly and know who's coming in and out of the reserves, find where the snares are, set ambushes, and therefore catch people coming in and out, unawares. And at the moment, it's working really well, and it's going to be quite interesting to see whether this approach moves on into other areas.
Yeah, as you say, it is so smart in the way that they're trying to approach the whole thing, and just as you say, a different thought on how to tackle anti-poaching. So we're actually going to let the team do the talking for you. There's a lovely little clip here of to meet the team and see what they're up to, and to explain to you all exactly what it is the Black Mambas are up to in the Baluli area.
Build resilience for this landscape. And who better to solicit than the young women in those communities?
All the communities that we are from, they are proud of us. They look up to us.
My name is Craig Spencer. I am the warden of the Olifants West region of Baluli, and I am also the, the founder of the Black Mamba Anti-Poaching Unit, which I started when I was head warden of Baluli, but that was in 2013, right?
Yes.
Yeah, 2013 we started the Black Mambas. Felicia and Colette were both with me in those days.
Hello, my name is Felicia Mrakani. I'm one of the first Mambas that started in 2013, and I'm a sergeant of the Black Mambas Anti-Poaching Unit.
Hello, I'm Colette Ngobeni. I'm one of the Black Mambas Anti-Poaching that we started in 2013, and I'm the supervisor of the Black Mambas Anti-Poaching Unit.
So the Black Mambas is a team of young women from 3 focal communities on our borders of Baluli, on the western boundary. They come from the tribal communities that directly influence our landscape, where the poachers are potentially kind of given safe haven and so on, and considered the Robin Hoods in their communities.
I was in high school when I started knowing about the animals and the Big Five while I was doing my grade 11. Adding on that, my dad was a tourist guide at the Kruger National Park. So on school holidays, they will take us to Kruger National Park and take us to a game drive, seeing all the Big Five animals. So I developed my interest for nature. When I finished my high school level, my parents didn't have money for me to go to varsity or college, so I heard about the opportunity that they were looking for Black Mambas, and they were starting this project of the Black Mambas, so I applied and then I got the job. Ever since then, I've been loving my job.
It started when I was doing my grade 10, as it's the same as Felicia, because even at my school, there were this same foundation, Timbavati Foundation. So they used to come to our school, teach us about environment. So after passing my matric, I was doing nothing at home since my father was passed away. So then my mother, she was a breadwinner at home. And I was very much interested of doing this because my husband was working at Timbavati as an environmental educator. So I started to love nature there.
In 2012, we started with the Black Mamba concept, okay? Poaching is a fact of life for any manager in a protected area. And, you know, whether it's socio-economic or socio-political, you're going to be confronted with these things. And we always throw the same old tools at the same old problem. We put on our military uniforms, we rush out there with guns, and we try and resolve the problem. But we realize that this is actually just perpetuating the problem. When the poachers come back, the landscape has changed dramatically. They adapt. There's cell phone connectivity, there's more access control points for tourists and visitors and whatever. The road networks have improved. The fences are down with our neighboring countries, blah, blah. So it kind of plays into their hands, you know, and we haven't really adapted in any way. The poachers adapt. We need to build trust, and we need to build resilience for this landscape. We need to take those communities by the hand and say, guys, we're not protecting this for ourselves and for our holiday pleasure. We're actually protecting this because this protects your economy, you know, and this is where you get your jobs and your skill set, and there's a huge economy built around the wildlife arena. And you've just heard from these two ladies here, the fact that they are here today is because their fathers, whatever, all worked in the national park or in the private nature reserves around the national park. So if the poachers get the upper hand, then that entire opportunity is lost and the wildlife economy collapses on its face. So we need the community to understand that. And who better to solicit than the young women in those communities, because they're the primary caregivers, and it's going to be a multi-generational kind of investment, if you like, you know. So, you know, these guys are mothers now, you know, and the information, the ethos, the value systems, everything are going to be transferred onto their children. They will eventually retire from the Black Mambas. I mean, you guys were part of the first ever, because everybody poo-hooed it and they said, no, this will never work. You know, this is a useless venture. You need to be able to jump out of helicopters. Women don't have the strength to run around in the bush all day in this heat and all this kind of thing. We started with 6 Mambas. Colette and Felicia were my first. I no longer have a rhino poaching problem on this landscape where these guys are deployed, and they're working day and night to do that. Our approach is passive. It's disruptive, but at the same time it's passive, if that makes sense, huh?
Yes.
Thanks for watching that. I hope you enjoyed that. Please remember to like and subscribe over here, or maybe here, I don't know.
Okay, so those are the guys from Eco Training who were giving us sort of closer to that video. But we thought there was no better way for the Mambas to tell their story than from their fearless leader and founder, Craig. You know, just an amazing story of how far they've come and how it all started in the beginning. Once again, Phil, I think you've spent some time with Craig, eh?
Yeah. Craig, very interesting fellow, you know, very passionate, highly enthusiastic. And I think that's part of the reason why it's so far been a really good success. I also wanted to just answer a question here. Suki, you've got a question here. And I do think, well, the question is, are they the only all-woman anti-poaching team? Yes, as far as I know, I think they are. Suki, certainly in South Africa.
Yeah, there's various other programs that are all female as well, but not in the anti-poaching front. There's been quite a big drive with a number of areas surrounding nature reserves that they've been trying to incorporate the women in the community and providing opportunity for them, where traditionally in many African cultures that has been muted for a time, you know, and so seeing these opportunities come up and the amazing work that so many of these women are doing has been hugely heartening and very exciting to all the various programs that have been running across the conservation areas. But these ladies are really quite special, as we've spoken about, you know, and with the support that they've received from various supporters out there, but in this case in particular, Samsung, who provided phones to them for the field, where they would actually place phones at certain places in protective casings that actually walk around with the phones themselves, the latest, most up-to-date Samsung phones. It gave them the opportunity to put these devices at certain locations, and very much like our cameras themselves, gives them an insight into various spots 24 hours a day, and they're able to then watch any potential or watch for any potential issues or suspicious activity in a certain region without actually being there on the ground. So it's not always just about the boots on the ground and being in the location, but actually just being able to see it, very much like our cameras. And here you can see the ladies at work with one of our boxes for the field. And a lot of challenges with these kinds of things too. Of course, you can see this is a waterproof casing. And you have to then also bear in mind the issues with heat. So we've had to make custom-made boxes to help them out with the phones staying out in the field. And it's been an amazing experience so far to see how far they've come with these, devices and taking some real modern technology into, as Craig was saying, a field of anti-poaching, which really hasn't changed much in 20 or 30 years. So it's exciting to see. And again, Phil, you've seen some of this on your own up there in the Baluli area.
Yeah, the concept of using modern technology is really something that they, I think, evolving quite nicely, mixing it into that wild environment and pretty raw environment. They've actually got an incredible, an app. So what they're doing now together, and great help from Samsung there, but they also would have been doing it for a while, wherever they find unusual signs, tracks of people coming through boundaries, broken fences, a snare or a hot snare zone. They log everything. They log every single unusual bit of track and sign, and that then gets put together on a daily and then a weekly and then a monthly basis, and obviously then it goes on through to the year. And then they've got maps that map out really, the hot spots where people are coming in and out, where the snares are being laid, if there's any new place, if it has anything to do with water holes or dry season, rainy season. It's quite amazing how much information they can gather by being out in the field, logging each bit of sign. But then also they're using our cameras, which is quite interesting. They monitor the cameras. And funny enough for us, I don't know if you saw, there was a clip of a hyena. This was in a different area, but the concept of surveillance, it's a great example, is there was a hyena in Korapan last week, and I saw it had a snare on its neck. And you let people know, they may or may not understand that they could have a snare problem, but that's something, even just us watching the cameras has a huge impact of understanding the environment, and that starts to become known out into the communities.
Yeah, exactly, Phil. Anti-poaching is so much just about being there. And because so many of these areas are such big areas, as you said, the Baluli around the 35,000 hectares, I think now they're covering an area of around 65,000 hectares. So to be able to cover all that in a single week or even a few months is almost impossible. And to have someone everywhere all the time is also impossible. So as you say, the technology that we've been able to get out there into the field, and simply just having our cameras out there too, looking out for the animals, but with the possibility of identifying, again, some suspicious behavior is really useful to the reserves, to the reserve managers, and of course to the anti-poaching team themselves, where they can correlate all that data and put it all together to figure out where the biggest threats are, because it's an ever-changing issue. This little photograph here, folks, is just another one of the great supporters of the program. This is actually Bindi Irwin. It's Steve Irwin's daughter, if you guys know the crocodile hunter from television years ago. And they're still doing some amazing conservation work around the world. And Bindi came out to visit the Black Mambas to essentially give her support to the team and also bring their significant social media following to the group themselves. And once again, this is more just to show you folks the great support that the Black Mambas have received from around the world, and how well it's been received as a program by various conservation entities all over the planet. And as a group, the Black Mambas are making a mark, and we haven't seen it yet, but there's a lot of hope that we will get a few more of these all-women anti-poaching teams. And even if it's not that, just to take an approach of boots on the ground and not necessarily reacting with huge aggression to any potential poaching issue, but rather incorporating the skills that they've learnt in the bush, walking fences, etc., that Phil was chatting about, but also engaging with the community. These people are all from the community themselves. They are known in the communities, and almost always that's where your poaching individuals will come from. So now, folks, we've got to move on to some of that community work that the Black Mambas have been involved with and are continually involved with. And this is the Bush Babies group and foundations. So, Phil, tell us a little bit about the Bush Babies.
Russ, they're part of the children's groups, all the schools around the communities, and they're really the Black Mambas go in there on a weekly basis and basically educate and give them a good idea as to what's going on in the reserves and what the Black Mambas do. And one of the ideas is obviously to pass that information back into the whole family unit, and also gives kids a lot of inspiration as to, to get into conservation, at a later stage.
Yeah, again, this is all just involvement in the community itself. And so often reserves have separated themselves from the communities. Those fences not just being physical boundaries, but also almost socio-economic boundaries, as Craig mentioned in the video earlier on. So getting the school children involved has really been remarkable. They've shown a huge amount of interest in the program. The parents of the children have also become interested and come out for for certain events where they do these little graduation ceremonies once they have attended enough of the classes. And as Phil says, these are weekly classes, normally around an hour long, and split into two groups. There's the Bush Babies themselves and then the mini Bush Babies. The Bush Babies are around 12 to 17-year-old students, and then the mini Bush Babies, I think the 3 to 7-year-old groups. So again, just a great program and initiative to incorporate the community around them, because really these reserves don't work without them. And it's models that we've seen become quite popular in various conservation groups around the world, and certainly here in Africa. It's the most successful lodges and reserves have always been those closely involved with their community. So, Phil, to finish off today, we just wanted to touch on, what are the Black Mambas up to today? How can our subscribers and members support them? And yeah, if there's any questions out there as well that you folks have before we sign off for today.
Yeah, Russ, I think they're keeping on doing what they're doing, and they constantly coming up with new ideas, new thoughts, and so far the results have been great. And if anyone is interested to take it up even further, you can go to the Africam website, and then down at the bottom of the site you'll see Africam for Good. You can have a look at all the information and details there. And also, it's quite nice to know that anyone who is on Africam Premium, we as a company support the Black Mambas directly. So we're all working together on this one.
Yeah, indeed. And so thank you very much, Phil, for tying that all up for us. And thank you to all of you for joining us. It's always a pleasure chatting to you. We'll sign off with this great shot of one of the Black Mamba ladies. And just to remind you all to keep watching the cameras, stay with us. You never know how you might help out there in the field in the fight against poaching. But thank you to all of you for joining us. Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, thanks very much, everybody. Thanks, Russ. I'll catch up with you all tomorrow.
Have a great show tomorrow, Phil. And to all the production team, thanks so much. Cheers, everyone. We'll see you next week for our next On Point.
Cheers, everyone. Have a great day.